So good day everyone. I promised I did this video in French already, but I want to do it in English because I feel it's an important topic, and I want to talk about standing rig and when and why you should change your standing rig. So some of you may know me or not. The story is I bought this boat, like it's a Bavaria Cruiser 40 2013. I bought it brand new in 2013, and I've sailed with it pretty much around 50,000 miles. Like I left upstate New York in Lake Champlain, then went down the Hudson to New York, did the Caribbean a year or two, and then I went across to Panama, and then from Panama I actually went up north instead of going to the South Pacific, and I ended up in Los Angeles, and now I'm in Mexico. I've been in and around Mexico for the last 3 or 4 years, with 2 years of COVID that kind of blocked me from going in the South Pacific. I want to talk about standing rigs because, you know, I feel I've had a few events from friends of mine that had boats and actually lost their standing rig this year. And I feel I came close to losing mine. And that's the story I want to tell you about. So what happened is, you know, I sailed a lot with this boat, and the first few seasons on the East Coast were kind of heavy wind, heavy seas at some point over there. It's been calmer since I've been in the Pacific, but I still, you know, I still do about 2,000 miles of sailing every year. The first few years I did 3,000 to 4,000 miles of sailing. I've had the boat since almost 10 years now. I've had years with more mileage and less mileage and all that kind of stuff. The first few seasons were the toughest on the boat because, like, we were on the East Coast and the boat has seen some 15 knots and some 20-foot swells. So when eventually I got to California and Los Angeles, and, you know, I came to Mexico, I went back up, and in 2019 I did some kind of a refit / upgrade of the boat, and I was in San Diego at the time. The boat was 7 or 8 years old, 6 years old at the time. And so I went to see an expert rigger over there. So I've sailed a lot in my life, but I'm in no means a professional rigger of any sort. I don't pretend to be. I just know that, you know, like any mechanical part, these things have a limited life that they're going to give you. And, you know, losing my mast is not something I want to do. And I often sail like 100 miles, let's say 200 miles from shore. So I want to make sure that my rig is good. So I did pay for a professional rigger to come on my boat and inspect my rig. And basically he told me that he thought my rig was just fine. He was impressed with the fact that, you know, there's a few pins between the gooseneck and the mast on my Selden rig. He says that normally these things are bent. Mine were original. They're not bent because I don't let my rig knocking in the wind or any of that sort of thing. So the rigger in San Diego told me that he felt my rig was in a good state. Eventually I went back down to Mexico. I was kind of south of Mexico in Zihuatanejo, and I had a transmission problem on my diesel, which kind of was forcing me to do an emergency haul out. And, you know, long story short, I felt the best option for my haul out was in Puerto Vallarta. Although I could go 100 miles south to Acapulco, like, there's all kinds of factors in there. I don't want to get into that story. But eventually, like, I sailed back upwind and sailed because I didn't want to use the engine. So we sailed up. We've hit some 28 knots, you know, on a close reach, and the waves that are associated with those kinds of conditions, not very intense. It was up and down. And then the whole Cabo Corriente, for those who sail those areas, like Cabo Corriente can be sometimes unpredictable. Nevertheless, we made it safe back to Vallarta, which I was happy. But as we were sailing, and I always do that, I'm always inspecting my rig. But basically, like, I noticed that there was a few strands of metal on an intermediate state from my first spreader to the mast that were unraveling. So basically, I had some breakage in some of the wires so it's a mesh of wires that are all bundled up together. And at the end of the ride, 5 of those wires were broken and were starting to unravel. So I don't know how many wires left were taking the load at that point. But certainly it's not a way you want to be sailing your boat 60 miles from shore or 100 miles from shore for that matter. So I got to Vallarta, I did a temporary fix on this thing, and I ended up changing these 2 intermediate stays that go from my first spreader up to the mast. And eventually the next year I changed all of the rig, like everything down to the chain plate. I didn't change the chain plate yet, but it's, you know, the ones that I can see. I'm going to inspect them all before I go across the ocean, but for now, the ones that I see are in good state, so I'm leaving it at that. Eventually I'll get to changing all the chain plate. All that to say that this prompted me to do my own research, and when I do research, like I try to go back to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer in this case is Selden, and in their book they're very clear that standing rig, the wires need to be changed every 20,000 miles, and this is what I want to bring to you. Like I've heard many sort of opinion in the sailing community about that. People say, "Oh, you change your standing rig every 10 years," or this or that. I feel that applies if you know, if your boat is parked in a marina anywhere, and you just do some weekend outs or even some afternoon outings, and you're back, you'll never reach 20,000 miles in that kind of usage profile, even if you do the occasional longer week-long trip. Now, if you are going to be a long-range extended cruiser and you're going to do more mileage with your boat, you know, everybody knows you need to log stuff up, and one of the things you need to log is it's just the sheer mileage that you're putting on the boat, because that will dictate what kind of maintenance you do on your standing rig, on your running rig, on your stuff like your autopilot, even your rudder bearings. All of these are mechanical parts that are irrelevant, independent from engine hours, but they do wear and they do have problems. I'm talking about rudder bearings because I had to change a rudder bearing on this boat. It was, I mean, the good news is it's a Jeffa bearing, it's available, it's easy to change, there's no problem. But it's all stuff that you need to start to be aware when you start to do more extended range. So I'll show you a few images now of the rig and the changing process. I hope you appreciate this video. If you do, please click a like. It really helps me get exposure here. Thanks. So that's the picture of the intermediate state that broke. So you can see 4 or 5 strand there of wire that just broke, and I had to sail with that. I unloaded the rig the most I could. I did all kinds of stuff to protect the boat, but you don't want to get there. You want to change your stuff before that. So that's the next year. Can't remember. That was fall 2021, and I was in San Carlos, and you can see the guys there are using their crane to come and rig my mast to be unstepped. So they unstepped the mast, and the guy that's there on the chair was supposed to be a professional rigger, but he tried to do the work, but he could not get the parts ordered for me in time to go back in the water. So we had to put back the mast on, and I sailed down to Vallarta with the old rig, you know, just hoping, thinking that things were going to be fine. I could have had the option of doing all the work in La Paz. La Paz is a good hub to do that, but I had a contact in Vallarta that was going to do it, and the guy's name in Vallarta is Peter Vargas, and Peter did an amazing job on my boat, and he changed all the stays. So like I said, the boat had about 45 to 50,000 offshore miles, and the stays lasted all that time, just giving me that warning of that intermediate stays that kind of broke. I don't recommend that you keep your stays that long. Selden says 20,000 miles. Regardless of whoever tells you otherwise, just when your boat hits 20,000 miles or 10 years, just change your standing rig so that way you won't lose your mast. It's preventive maintenance. These are the guys in Vallarta. That's Peter Vargas' son there with his buddy, and they came in and started to undo all my rig. I felt, you know, I could have done some of the job myself, but on the Selden rig, it's actually tough to change all the rigging without taking the mast down. So eventually we had to take the mast down again in Vallarta, which you'll see in the next few images. And you know, calling a boom truck, all of that in Mexico. I do speak Spanish a fair amount. You know, it's kind of complex to have to manage all of that yourself and order the parts from the States and all that, where he had all the contacts. You may be curious, like, he charged me $6,000 US for all the rigging parts, plus all the work. So that includes that boom truck with the rig, all of his guys. I literally touched nothing. Like, I really didn't have to do anything, and these guys just came in and did all the work for me for $6,000. And I mean, just the part quotation from San Diego was $5,000. So I feel like, you know, $1,200. You got to figure the boom truck, the yard time, coordinating that all by yourself. Like, he's there, he's ready, and any parts that I had an issue with, like, he corrected, and he really did a nice job. So anyway, the lessons learned here is, you know, if you're cautious, like my boat actually doubled the extended life, but I don't recommend you take that as what to do. Like, the next time my boat hits 20,000 miles, you can be sure that I'll change all that rigging. You know, I like to think that I preserve my rig, even though I sail a lot and I sail offshore a lot. I try to preserve my rig with different ways, but that'd be the topic of another video. And I think that's why my rig actually lasted longer. So anyway, I hope this was informative for you. And if you listen up to here, please give a like to this video. I need to gain some exposure on that YouTube channel. So, and I hope to produce some more technical content like that, hopefully helping you guys. Have a good day.